Anna. I am a yoga teacher and a yoga health coach. I've been teaching yoga for over 20 years in Cape Town, South Africa, and I have been a health coach for over 3 years now, and I am absolutely loving the journey. I've just had a one-on-one session with a delightful client, and we were chatting about the space of a part of our body freezing, being cold, being stuck. And so that's why I thought I'd come on here and chat a little bit about the air element. In yoga and Ayurveda, we love chatting about the chakras. We love chatting about how each of the elements impacts us. And the air element is key. It is vital. Air and ether form what is known as vata. And this is kind of like this idea of movement, and we'll get into that in another stage. But what I wanted to hone in today is this idea of the air element and why that is important and how we can use that to bring balance to us in our yoga practice. Now, the reason why I know a lot about that is because I have a lot of air in my system. I can be up and around and here and there and everywhere. And I also know what it feels like to just be stuck on the couch and not want to move. I often tend to fluctuate between these two. And so the idea is to find this lovely balance in between. Now, if you think of the qualities of air, air is light, it is quite cool, it is mobile, it is quite volatile, it moves around. And so when we have too much of this element in our bodies, in our physical bodies, in our mind, in our emotions, it can impact the way we operate, the way we are. So what does this mean for us in our yoga practice? And very simply, we can use the air element in different ways. If you wake up in the morning and you feel really tired and groggy and stagnant, that probably means that there is not a lot of mobility, not a lot of movement within the cells within your body. And so you want to have a practice where you're drawing more air, more prana, more life force into you. So you may want to do a very, very active yoga practice to try and get more air and energy built up in your system. So again, if you're feeling groggy, if you're feeling heavy, if you're feeling lethargic, if that's in the mind, if that's in the body, you really need more of a dynamic yoga practice. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to do a vinyasa or an Ashtanga yoga practice or a hot yoga practice. It just means that your yoga practice should maybe incorporate a lot more dynamic movements. So instead of doing a static forward bend and holding, maybe you want to do 4 or 5 rounds dynamically. Maybe instead of doing a static trikonasana, your triangle pose, you actually maybe just want to go in and out of it. The same with the warrior. Maybe instead of just holding your warrior pose, you actually may want to do it dynamically. And so by doing things dynamically, you're going to create a little bit more heat. And because you're inhaling and exhaling with awareness, you are also able to draw in the air, the prana, into your being. So again, if you're feeling heavy, if you're feeling groggy, then doing dynamic movements where you're drawing in a lot more prana can be helpful to you. If you are on the other extreme and you feel quite frazzled and you're here and you're there and you're thinking of everything and there's a lot of movement within your being, within your mind, you probably already have a lot of air in your system. And so what you need is to slowly start to dissipate and move that air out of your system. And the best way to do that is with slow, long exhalations, with slow, mindful, static yoga postures where you are steady and static and you're still and you're breathing, and all the fluctuation and the busyness can slowly release down to the bottom, to the surface, and dissipate. So this is how we use the air element in our yoga practice. If we're feeling very stagnant, very heavy, we need to create a bit more dynamic movement, a bit more movement, air movement in us. If there is a lot of air within us or around us, especially if it's a windy day, we need to do a yoga practice that is a little bit more steady, a little bit more stable, a little bit more static, so that there isn't too much air moving around, that everything can settle and slow down. And so we often oscillate between these two extremes of too much air and too little air. And so the beauty that you can use with your yoga practice is finding that middle balance, that halfway space, and trying to stay in that space. So it doesn't mean that we're never going to do a dynamic practice, and that our practice is only ever going to be balanced, and that we're never going to be doing a practice that is calm and steady. We need to use the different practices to bring us to that balanced space, and understanding where you are in the present moment, in the current moment, is super helpful. Because if you are already slow and groggy and lethargic, and you then just do a yoga practice where you're seated and calm, it's going to be good, but it's probably not going to be as productive and good for you as if you were to do something dynamic. And the same goes as if you've been really busy and there's been a lot of movement and you've been here, there, and everywhere, and you then go to a yoga practice where you're just going from one posture to the next posture, and you're kind of like going through that vinyasa, and there's no time to just be still and calm. Again, the practice isn't bad for you. It's great that you're doing it, but it's probably not the best for you at that point in time. So understanding the two, understanding where you're at, can be exceptionally helpful. Now, if you are wanting a little bit more information on this, or if you're wanting a little bit more information on how you can use Ayurvedic practices to help bring you into balance, my key tip for you is to start doing seasonal resets, getting in tune with the seasons and seeing what is happening seasonally. So at the moment, we are in winter here in Mozambique. Winters here are dry, they're not very wet, they're a little cold and a little windy. So when I understand what's happening in the seasons, I can slowly just reset my diet, I can reset my practices. And when you take just 7 days to acknowledge that shift and that change, you can do so much for your health, to improve your health and your well-being. So if you're keen, I have my 10-step process. It is absolutely free. Just head to the link in the description below, and in there I will give you the DIY seasonal reset, how you can do it at home. Plus, also for those of you who actually would like to do it in a group, there is also an opportunity to come along and join our group that we do, where we meet 4 times a year. So I hope to see you on the inside. If nothing else, I really hope that you get the DIY so that you start pretty much creating a seasonal reset for yourself and possibly even your community and your students in your own time. Have a beautiful day and see you soon. Lots of love.